There are two night games this Saturday that I am going to be paying close attention to. Number one, obviously, is Michigan traveling to Norman, Oklahoma to take on the Oklahoma Sooners. But number two is Boston College Eagles traveling to East Lansing to play the Michigan State Spartans on NBC and Peacock. Michigan State is a 4.5 point favorite in this matchup. Last season, they lost 23 to 19 in a very close, toxic, wet, rainy, turnover filled night. Also a night game, but that time at Boston College. It's a home and home series, and I hope that more of these games can be played in the future where we have Power 4 non conference matchups, whether it's between the ACC and Big Ten or any combination of the Big Ten, ECC, SEC, and Big 12. In fact, I would prefer Power 4 teams to exclusively play other Power 4 teams, and the one FCS game per year that you get can be allotted for a group of 5 team. But that's for a different video and a different discussion. Boston College, according to FPI, is given a 52.5% chance to win this game. And the spread is 4.5, which decisively leans Michigan State, but also isn't indicative that the books think Michigan State is going to dominate this game. It should be competitive as it was last year. Michigan State is mostly given home field advantage in this line of about 3 points, and they'd slightly be viewed as better according to if they were playing on a neutral field, which ESPN's efficiency metrics agree with. I'm throwing a lot at you, but I think that this game comes down to more than the numbers because these teams brought in some new players. They had a lot of different changes. Boston College going from Thomas Castellanos to Dylan Longeran, incoming transfer from Alabama. Totally different types of quarterbacks there. Michigan State brought in a ton of players, revamped their offensive line, revamped parts of their defense, added wide receiver depth, and last season they also brought in a ton of new players. They really had to clear house from Mel Tucker's awful job at trying and failing to build Michigan State up. I think this game comes down to the fact that Michigan State has not outscored their opponents, any opponent that they've played, since Prairie View A&M in 2024. And I think that was in the month of September, late September, early September. I don't exactly know. Maybe early October. But it's been close to a full calendar year since Michigan State has won the second half. Even in their victories, last season against Purdue, a game I attended, Michigan State lost the second half. They lost it. It took Purdue being an awful team to give MSU that win more than it took MSU pulling away and winning by the 40 points they should have beaten that Purdue team by. Boston College, however, has not won a road non-conference game since October 7th of 2023 against Army. They won that 27-24. The other games that year they won on the road in conference were Syracuse on the road 17-10 and Georgia Tech on the road 38-23. Not exactly really good teams. That Syracuse team was Dino Babers' last squadron. He got fired at the end of the year. That Georgia Tech team also lost to Bowling Green, and their signature win of the year was an upset over a Miami team that finished 7-6 and started Tyler Van Dyke, and I believe Emory Williams was their other quarterback and was just really awful. These teams have not had very impressive resumes or impressive seasons in quite a long time. In fact, I'd argue the high point of Boston College recently, in recent memory, was either beating Florida State last year, or what it was either beating SMU in the Wasabi Fenway Bowl the year prior in 2023, or only losing to a 13-1 Florida State team by 2 points in September of that 2023 season. The high mark of Michigan State over the past several seasons is probably a win over an 8-5 Illinois team in 2022. Both of these programs aren't fascinating in the sense of if you're interested in high-quality football play, you are not going to be obsessed with these teams, at least yet. you are not. If you are a college football nerd, as all of you watching this probably are, then yeah, you will be fascinated with this game. Because both of these teams have some good players. Both of them should go to a bowl game. And there is some semblance of NFL talent on each of these rosters. I would actually say they share that along the lines of scrimmage in some instances. They also had problems protecting their quarterback in their week 1 games, as many teams had. Week 1 was pretty rough across the board. I think a lack of returning production had a lot to do with that. So when I look at the matchup between the Eagles and the Spartans, this is going to come down to very simple, and I mean very simple things. This is going to come down to fundamental soundness. This is going to come down to a turnover, or protecting your quarterback, or special teams. That's what it's going to come down to. Even if, because there is a possibility of this, with how I would say thin these teams are at certain positions and their volatility. This could end up being a blowout on any side. I think one team has a much higher chance to blow out the other team, but both of these teams can win this game by a few touchdowns if things get really, really ugly. But it will come down to a few plays here to get to that outcome. It will come down to, again, fundamental soundness. It will come down to who is developed better. There is, in my mind, no real X factor player here that is so above and beyond any player on the other team, where it's not like Jeremiah Smith or Caleb Downs with Ohio State, and they're playing against a team that maybe matches up with them well, but that opposing team doesn't have their X factor players. You can't hedge on that assumption in a game like this, where maybe one team matches up well. Say Michigan State matches up well against Boston College. I happen to think they do, but Boston College, say, in theory, were to have two wonderful NFL players, so even if there is that matchup advantage, you question, but can they really overcome these two amazing players that Boston College has, and no one on MSU's roster is close? That's not this game here. This game will come down to, again, a handful of plays that lead to whatever outcome transpires. Looking at some statistics really quickly before we dive into the matchup here, Boston College played an FCS team, so I'm using some points per play data from last season. Boston College was about pretty even in points per play margin, which means for every play they ran, they scored about the same amount of points as every play their opponent ran. They had a negative 0.001 points per play margin. Incredibly balanced, with a points per play gained of 0.374 per play and allowed 0.375 points per play. Michigan State, in their lone game against Western Michigan, an FBS opponent, so I have data for that, had a margin of victory, points per play margin, of 0.226, with a defense that allowed less than a tenth of a point per play, and an offense that started off fast but, sputtered in that second half. I believe that Aiden Childs is an X-Factor player for Michigan State, along with Nick Marsh, Amari Kelly. I think that Jordan Hall and Wayne Matthews III are some X-Factor players to pay attention to for the Michigan State Spartans. As for Boston College, I believe that the Eagles have a wide receiver in Lewis Bond that everyone should be paying attention to. They have some NFL players, potential NFL players in the offensive line. I think Michigan State does as well, but Boston College has been more proven there in recent memory and returned some good players on that unit. A lot of Michigan State's improvements were due to incoming transfers, and Boston College also has some safeties that I like. KP Price is someone who I thought in the preseason could contend to be an all-ACC caliber player. It's the same with Max Tucker, who had a pass deflection against Fordham. And Davion Crouch is one of the top linebackers in the ACC. So these teams, while not top 25 caliber, at least to what I know of yet, FPI has Boston College ranked 45th, Michigan State 63rd, respectively. They have some players that you have to pay attention to. They do. And that's what's going to make a matchup that's in the 60s with pretty low wins, Michigan State being the favorite, but not by much, and a night kickoff in a pretty rowdy environment in Spartan Stadium. I think this is going to be a pretty fun game to watch, and I think that you should put this on your whether it's a spreadsheet or whether it's your notepad, whether it's a to-do list that you have, you should watch this matchup, even if you are not a Spartan fan or not a Boston College Eagles fan. I think the key storyline here is, can Boston College run the ball, because they couldn't against Fordham? And for Michigan State, is Childs protected? Because I do not think that his awareness in the pocket is all that good. Looking at him compared to Dylan Raiola told me a few things in their week 1 games. I think that Childs, if pocket awareness is equal, I would rather have Childs than Raiola. Now, maybe that's insane, because I think Cincinnati is definitely better than Western Michigan. And I also think that Nick Marsh is a better receiver than anyone Nebraska has. But there are some things about Childs, such as his mobility, and I think even right now his accuracy, at least that I saw, that I don't quite know if Raiola has yet. But something Raiola does have that Childs does not is Raiola has pocket awareness. Raiola has a sense of when he's about to get hit, when pressure's about to break down. He has, I think, a good feel for defenses that I don't quite know if Childs has. Now, both don't handle pressure well. Not really anyone does, but I think Raiola, despite not having the legs Childs does a better job feeling it, escaping, and trying to create a neutral or positive play out of a busted play, busted protection, while Childs usually takes the sack or doesn't get the ball out. But Childs, I think, has made some progress here. Some. But in the realm of picking up blitzes, in the realm of escaping the pocket when he has to, and creating something out of nothing, he can sometimes do that, but it's a lot like last year's pretty hit and miss. So I think it's very, very important that he is protected. As for Boston College not being able to run the ball, that is certainly a concern. And I think that pass protection is a key factor for both of these teams here. Boston College allowed 2 sacks to Fordham. Again, Fordham, an FCS team. The rushing offense for Boston College, I've said it a few times, so I may as well tell you how they performed on the ground against Fordham. They ran for 2.5 yards per carry, while only taking a negative 9-yard loss, or a 9-yard loss, not a double negative. Correct me. 9-yard loss in sacks. It's not good enough. It's not. I mean, they have Turbo Richard, and they have some really nice, potentially NFL caliber offensive linemen. Very spotty. Not all of them are NFL caliber, but they do have some players who could be in the pros. And Turbo Richard averaged 3 yards per carry. They had 3 rushing touchdowns. One of them, outside of Richard, to Bo McCormack and Alex Broom. I think that Boston College also, when you look at this game, they kind of did the opposite of Michigan State. Boston College against Fordham here, they were up on Fordham, I think 21-3 entering halftime. Yeah, 21-3. They scored 45 points in the second half. 45 of them. So, kind of the opposite of Michigan State. Turned it up in the second half, but also to only be up 21-3 against Fordham is not nearly as impressive as 21-0 up against Western Michigan. I think Western Michigan, we would all agree, would beat Fordham. So second half adjustments can be a key here for sure, but I think it's too early to tell who has the better second half adjustments. Rushing offense, I would give the edge to Michigan State there. Mekhi Frazier looked pretty good, and their run blocking offensive line I loved. Pass blocking O-line though, there are things to fix there. Splash plays, that's a key factor. Who can create game-breaking plays? Boston College, they have Lewis Bond. Michigan State has Nick Marsh. I think both quarterbacks, if Lonergan is healthy, they have natural talent to them. They were both highly recruited out of high school. Bill O'Brien, I think, is a good coach. Jonathan Smith's a good coach. Both are good offensive minds. Busted coverages. In which defense? Both defenses have some good players, but both defenses also have some holes. Let's be real here. Who's more disciplined? Who's more fundamentally sound? Who maybe has that one busted coverage that helps the other team win, and who doesn't? And finally, quality depth, I think, is a real important thing. Both teams are not top 25 talent rosters. They're not even close. Consequentially, in the fourth quarter, one of these teams or both could even break down, and you could see the dynamic of the game change as one side of the ball, or the side of the ball that's the weakest really begins to wither, and the side that is strong is able to hold on, but they have to take a larger load. There is a chance that this game gets very one-sided one way or the other. It could also be very competitive. I think odds say that it's going to be competitive more than it's going to be an ugly game. That's why the line is close as it is. I do think, though, that with Michigan State being at home, with the Spartans, from my standpoint, having the better quarterback, I think they have the better run game, both run game as an offense, but also run defense, too. And without knowing the status of Boston College's quarterback, how healthy he is, injured he is, I don't know a ton about the backup, and it's clear that he is not as good as Lonergan. I think that Michigan State has some edges here. I think they will dominate the ground game. I think they will run well on Boston College's defense, but more importantly, I don't see Boston College rushing for over 100 yards here against Michigan State. I don't. I think that both offensive tackle groups are going to probably struggle in this matchup, especially Michigan State's, especially the Spartans. And I think that both receiver cores are going to be pretty hit and miss because the quarterbacks will either be having to escape the pocket or throw the ball away or try to just accept that the play's dead because their offensive line couldn't protect them. But there will also be moments where I think Nick Marsh and Louis Bond are going to take advantage of secondaries that have good players, but I don't think they have any player that is as good as those receivers. I don't think Michigan State is a DB as good as Boston College's receiver one, Bond. And it's the same thing with Boston College's best DB not being quite up to caliber for Marsh. So there are big plays to be had. I also think that Michigan State has the edge with staff quite significantly and the special teams edge. Ultimately, though, both talent rosters are pretty close, and we've seen time and time again, elite staffs that lack in talent don't win titles. Some mediocre staffs that are abundant in talent, though, do win titles. Ultimately, though, we're not talking about a national title here. We are talking about a week 2 football game where there's going to be a lot of unknowns, decent amount of question marks. I think Michigan State wins, and I think that they cover, and I think they cover pretty convincingly. I'm not going to go further than what I'm about to say, but I think Michigan State wins by more than a touchdown. Whether that's 8 points, whether that's 9 points, 10, or anything more than that, I think Michigan State wins big relative to the spread. They win by either 2 scores or maybe Boston College scores late and makes it a 1-score game, but Michigan State, I think, will be comfortably in control here. Michigan State was rotating, similar to Michigan, actually. They were rotating a ton of players. Offensive line, defense, offense. I think really once they went up 21-0, they turned down the knob. Similarly to Michigan, I think similarly to Oklahoma, Boston College didn't quite do that. When you score 45 points in the second half, you're not turning things down. You're looking to make a statement, or maybe they are just that good. Only time will tell. But looking at the efficiency metrics, which a lot of that's expected points added or points per play, a lot of advanced analytics, ESPN's efficiency views Michigan State as better. They're at home. The books view Michigan State as better. That's why the line is at 4.5, and they're convincingly better enough to where it's not Michigan State minus 2.5. They're not minus 3. It's not in that field goal range. This is in between a field goal and a touchdown here. So I'm taking the Spartans to win. I'm taking them to cover, and they will be 2-0. And I think that will give them plenty of momentum, seeing how UCLA looked, how Minnesota looked, how Nebraska looked, to where Michigan State can find a way to potentially go bowling this year. Think about it this way. Michigan State had the same game Wisconsin did. Michigan State 23-6, they won by 17. Wisconsin won 17-0. It was the same performance in terms of the final score and in terms of the fact that both defenses for the Badgers and Spartans looked far better than both offenses. But the difference is Michigan State started off very fast and then clearly turned down the notch. Wisconsin was fighting for survival there. And I think Wisconsin's defense is pretty good. I'd be inclined to think Michigan State's is of similar caliber, maybe better, and their offense is certainly better. And I think that that is something that is encouraging, given Michigan State does not have the recruiting talent Wisconsin does, and they're not on the same timetable either, because Fickell's 1 year ahead of Smith, and he has a much tougher schedule to deal with. Thank you so much for watching. Didn't ask any of you to subscribe, but if you're still on here, make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, make sure to hit the notification bell, and we'll see you in the next one.